So exercise number 3. Suppose that Anna can earn 20 euro per hour before taxes and can work up to 40 hours per week. Consider two proportional income tax rates, 20% and 40%. 3a. In one graph, draw two weekly consumption leisure budget constraints of Anna reflecting the two different tax rates of 20% and 40%. Okay, so the red budget constraint here refers to a tax rate of 20% and the green one to the tax rate with 40%. So as you can see, I draw a coordinate system where on the x-axis we have leisure and on the y-axis we have consumption. So the maximum amount of leisure that Anna can enjoy or consume is 40 units, so 40 hours per week. So if she's doing so, she's not earning any income, therefore the consumption is zero. On the other hand, if she is enjoying leisure of zero, so she's fully working 40 hours per week, what she can earn at most, if there is a 20% corporate tax rate, is then simply 20 times 40 times 0.8, which is then 640. So 20 times 40 is referring to the maximum income that she can get. So for the full 40 hours that she's working, she's receiving 20 hours per hour. Therefore, her income is 800. Multiplying this with 0.8, which is then your net income, gives you 640 units of consumption. Doing the same thing with 40% tax rate. So if you have 800 euros of gross income, multiplying this with 0.6, which will give you your net income, you end up with 480 units of consumption. Yeah, and then if you connect the 2 points here and here, you end up with the two weekly consumption leisure budget constraints of Anna. Now, in sub-exercise B, we are asked to draw a set of representative indifference curves such that the income effect of the tax increase from 20% to 40% outweighs the substitution effect. So in particular, we are asked to draw indifference curves such that there is a decrease in leisure, even though the price of leisure is decreasing. Yeah, so the reason being that if you have more taxes to pay, so if the taxes on your income are increasing, it means that if you enjoy leisure instead of working, you give up less income in an environment where you have a 40% tax rate than an environment where you have 20% tax rate. Yeah, so leisure becomes relatively cheaper if there is a tax increase on the income. Therefore, what you would expect is that if leisure is a normal good, the demand for leisure should increase since the price for it is decreasing. And hence, on the other side, the price of consumption is decreasing. So if the income, so I mean, there are two effects. So first of all, if there is a tax increase, obviously the price of leisure is decreasing, but at the same time, your real income is decreasing. So if you still want to be able to like hit a particular level of consumption, you basically need to reply by working more hours in order to kind of still hit this level of consumption that you had before. So basically, if you have an income effect, it would mean that you reply to this. So you reply to this price increase of consumption, on the other hand, by this price decrease of leisure by working more. Yeah. So here what we have is exactly this situation. So here what you can see is that I draw two indifference curves, which I mean, it's not super exact because it's quite difficult to draw them in the exact way. So also in the exam, you don't have to draw them really exact. What should be clear is that there is a movement here happening from this point, so this point here to this point here, which means that we basically have a decrease in leisure even though the price of leisure is decreasing. So here the income effect is stronger, is outweighing the substitution effect. So as a consequence, since since Anna still wants to kind of have a particular amount of consumption or level consumption, she answers by or replies by working more in order to increase her real income. Yeah, so this is reflected by this kind of representative indifference curves here. Now in C, we are asked to find kind of indifference curves which are reflecting the opposite. So we are asked to draw a set of representative indifference curves such that the substitution effect of the tax increase from 20% to 40% outweighs the income effect. So what you can see here is that the movement here is in the opposite direction. So here what we have is a movement in this direction. So if the price of leisure is decreasing, Anna replies by enjoying more leisure. Yeah, so here the substitution effect due to the relative price increase of consumption to leisure is stronger than the income effect due to the fact that now the real income of Anna is decreasing due to this tax increase. Yeah, and this is kind of an example which is now in the opposite direction. So the one effect, not a substitution effect, is stronger, and hence the amount of leisure which is demanded by Anna is now increasing, in contrary to the sub-exercise that we had before. So yes, those are two examples which are supposed to show you that depending on what type of kind of good leisure is, you can see leisure as a good. The kind of the reaction of consumers with respect to their consumption of this good differs depending on whether it is perceived as a normal, other, or inferior good to them. And yes, this finishes this exercise and brings us to the last exercise. So problem number 4, discuss briefly the consequences of the corporate tax for firms' investment decision. So what I will do is I will go first through kind of the incentives that a firm has if there are no taxes. So what is determining the investment decision of a firm if there are no taxes? And then I will go to the world where you actually have taxes. And yeah, okay, I will first go to the no tax environment, then I will cover a situation with taxes, and then I will go to a situation where you have taxes, deductions, and investment tax credits. So, if there are no taxes, what is determining the investment decisions of a firm? Well, obviously, you always have a benefit. So, the benefit of an investment, which is typically the return of an investment, and you have the marginal costs of an investment. Yeah, so which is basically the amount that you give up in order to make this investment. So you can think of this as the opportunity costs of the capital that you're using to invest. So the opportunity costs are other potential investments that you could have done if you're considering this investment. So the level of investment is determined by setting equal the marginal benefit of this investment to the marginal costs. Yeah, so uh, each unit of dollar that you're investing will give you some marginal benefit in return, but it also will cost you something, and this is reflected by the marginal costs. And by setting those two values equal, you can, and solving it for the level of investment, you basically determine the level of investment if there are no taxes in optimum. Now, if we consider a situation with taxes, what will happen then? Well, then obviously there is a decrease. So depending on the tax, so here it's a corporate tax. Here what you will have is that the marginal benefit of the firm will decrease. The reason being that for any return that this firm is making, the government is receiving some share from this return. Yeah, so as a consequence, when the firm is deciding on how much to invest, it will if it's forward-looking and rational, obviously it will um, account for the fact that if it's receiving some value X as a return, then the government will receive some share of this return X, and hence the real return after taxes will be lower. And this decreases, obviously, the marginal benefit. And since in this example here, the marginal costs are unaffected, it means that firms invest less because the marginal benefit is decreasing, whereas the marginal costs are still the same. Yeah. So if you simply introduce taxes, in general, the firms will invest less. Now we come to a situation where we have taxes, but we also allow for deductions and so deductions of depreciation, for instance, and investment. So the possibility to receive an investment tax credit. So as I told you before, the tax is lowering the marginal benefit, but on the other hand, deductions and the possibility to receive an ITC, so I shortcutted the investment tax credit here, this can lower the marginal costs. Okay, so if you simultaneously have the tax increasing the marginal benefit, but the deductions and the possibility to receive an ITC is lowering your marginal costs, what could happen is that the investments could even increase when you introduce taxes, because you could simply use the deductions, which are sometimes a consequence of this tax, and you can simply get the ITCs, which further decrease your marginal costs. Yeah, we saw an example like this in the previous exercise, I think, exercise sheet, where I showed you how the the real return, so the marginal benefit and minus the marginal cost of a firm, how this changes depending on what type of financing the firm is choosing, and how high the taxes. Yeah, so there you could have seen, like you were able to see that deductions and the possibility to receive ITCs was decreasing the marginal costs. So depending on the financing form that you were choosing, you could even receive a higher total benefit at the end, a real benefit at the end when there were taxes, corporate taxes, because of the same the simultaneous effect that deductions and investment tax credits would lower your marginal costs of investment. So as a consequence, what could happen is that even if we introduce taxes, the investments could increase if we allow for deductions and the possibility of firms receiving an investment tax credit. Yes, and this finishes this week's problem set. So, yeah, see you next week.